During a trip to India, 18-year-old Ruth has a spiritual awakening and embraces the techniques of a guru named Baba. Back home in the Sydney suburb, her parents are shocked to learn their daughter now answers to the name Nazni and has no intention of returning. They manufacture a tale about her father, Gilbert, having had a stroke and being on the verge of death, and her mother, Miriam, travels to India in hopes of persuading her to come home. With no success until she suffers a serious asthma attack, Ruth agrees to accompany her to Australia on her return flight. Meanwhile, Miriam has arranged a phony reunion with Gilbert in the outback, claiming to Ruth that he is recuperating. There, Gilbert, as well as Ruth's brother Robbie, along with the promiscuous wife, and Tim, along with his male lover, Yani, all convince at a nearby resort. There, they meet with PJ Waters, a famous American counselor who deprograms members of religious cults. Ruth arrives and goes to visit her father at a farm. There, she is confronted by the family along with PJ, who have staged an intervention. Ruth is against all and attempts to fight them, but ultimately relents and agrees to accompany PJ for a treatment session under the provision that she may return to India once they have finished. Ruth departs with PJ to a remote cabin where he isolates her and begins to challenge her faith in Baba, exposing that Baba's doctrines have been directly copied from Hinduism. During the first night, Uni, who is staying at a nearby, arrives to bring a change of clothes for Ruth and performs some tasks on PJ. The following morning, Ruth is angered when she finds PJ has strung her sari up in a tree and retaliates by forming a help signal out of stones. Later, PJ takes Ruth to visit her family, and they all screen a documentary exposing the tactics of cults, including the Mansion family, Heaven's Gate, and Rajneesh. That night, after returning to the cabin, PJ awakens to find a distressed Ruth has lit the tree and her sari on fire. Ruth propositions PJ and the two spend the time together, and one thing leads to another. In the morning, Uni, Tim, and Yani arrives to bring Ruth to a party which PJ accompanies her on. When they return, a drunken Ruth insults PJ's manhood before ordering him to perform certain tasks. The next morning, PJ's assistant and lover Carol arrives from the United States, chastising him for screening her phone calls and demanding her return home. She ultimately agrees. In deprogramming session lasting one more day, Ruth begins to taunt PJ and emasculates him by making him wear a dress, but relents when he responds by writing the phrase "be kind" on her forehead. She is suddenly overcome with guilt and begins crying, confessing that she does not allow anyone to become emotionally close to her. Ruth decides to leave, but PJ, who believes himself to be in love with her, attempts to stop her. The two have a physical altercation in which he punches her, knocking her unconscious. PJ leaves with an unconscious Ruth in the boot of his car. On the road, he encounters Tim, Robbie, and Yun en route to the cabin. PJ tells them Ruth has fled and they should separate and search for her. Yun insists she accompany PJ, who reluctantly allows her in the car. As they drive, Yun hears Ruth banging on the lid of the boot and orders him to stop the car. She lets Ruth out of the boot and she begins running into the bush, with PJ pursuing her on foot, proclaiming his love for her. PJ eventually collapses of exhaustion in the heat and has a vision of Ruth as the Durga before Yun. Tim and Robbie come to his and Ruth's aid. Ruth departs in with Yun, Tim, and Robbie along with PJ, whom they place in the bed of the truck. During the drive, Ruth asks them to stop the truck. She gets into the bed with PJ and comforts him. A year later, Ruth writes to PJ from Jaipur, where she is now living with her mother after her father left her for his secretary. Ruth explains to PJ that she is still seeking spirituality and has recently completed reading the Bhagavad Gita. She now has a boyfriend but confesses she loves PJ from afar. Back in the United States, PJ responds to Ruth, explaining that he and Carol now have twin sons, though he too confesses a love for her. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let us know in the comment section below which movie you want us to recap next. As always, until the next time.